What's up, mother... Two bosses and a butcher, bro. Square up. Was that me? This new Blood Surge build changes everything. I just set the world record for the fastest Blood Surge council kill, and I also set the record for the most points ever in a tier 8 Blood Surge build. This new version is faster, it does more damage, it's tankier, it has better resource management, and it requires less uber uniques. No matter what perspective or what angle you're looking at, this build is just better than the old version, and it is so fun to play. It's still just a 2-button wonder. You just run around, cast Blood Surge, blow up the screen, but with this new version, you're going to be tankier, and you're going to be getting more points, you're going to be killing bosses faster. I love this new version of Blood Surge, and I really recommend you guys try it out. Before going into details, let's first talk about the sponsor of this video, Dwarven Realms. Dwarven Realms is a pretty neat game developed by two twin brothers, and here's how it looks. You start from scratch, playing it from a 3D point of view with no real equipment or anything other than a default weapon that you can swap out for others, and basically just run around to hack and slash a big pack of mobs. It's a chaotic but super fun RPG that's honestly pretty similar to Diablo 2, but with a way bigger hordes of mob packs. You basically start at level 0 and immediately start killing mobs, dropping extra loot and resources while doing so. Then you can go and challenge and fight a boss who will drop even better quality loot and upgrade your build. Just basic ARPG stuff. It's just a fundamentally good game. After that, you can access the next level to kill even bigger and stronger mob hordes. Talking about big mob hordes, they spawn in insanely huge waves, which is honestly the most fun part of this game, as you will be hooked at the gameplay, and there's nothing more exciting than pulling a bunch of mobs and making them all explode together. Little by little, you will start to improve your character too, and on top of the loot you get, you can also upgrade your stats, and more importantly, your skill tree, which kind of reminds me of the PoE tree, as it's extremely comprehensive, giving you so many options and ways to play. If only Diablo 4 Necromancer had a tree like this. Alongside stat and skill allocation, there's also gear crafting, and as you have the ability to mine for resources and build your own home fort, as pretty much everything in the game is destroyable as well. It currently still is in early access, and it has that raw indie game feel, but it gives you the vibe of a cool mix of Diablo 2, Path of Exile, and Vampire Survivors slapped on top. I really recommend you go and try it out for yourself, especially now since Season 0 was released less than a week ago, meaning that you can expect a bunch of constant updates coming soon. So go find it on your Steam or use the link in our description below, as there's no better time to check it out. Now, let's jump back into the build. Let's talk about some Blood Surge. So how is this new setup able to do so much more damage? Well, for starters, we're still running a lot of the same combos. We still have the Career's Embrace for huge amounts of drains and for full corpse consumption. Every corpse that gets made gets eaten by this. We're playing with the Embalmer so that we're constantly spawning blood orbs from those corpses. And then this is pairing with the Wrathmas Chosen to give us tons of overpowers. But what has changed is we are now running the Crown of Lucian. This is a ginormous damage multiplier, 75% on a helmet, but the downside is it's going to make our Blood Surge cost significantly more resources. However, if we play with the Banished Lord's Talisman, this is going to give us a guaranteed overpower for spending resources. So after we spend 275, we get a guaranteed overpower. These things pair together tremendously well for a huge damage increase. Finally, obviously, we're spending tons of resource. How do we pay for it? The answer is the Starlight aspect. This aspect is going to give us resource back every time we get healed. And remember, tons of blood orbs all over the map, tons of healing from Blood Surge, tons of extra drains from Blood Surge healing us, which means we have absolutely infinite essence to spend on our Lucian, on our Blood Surge, doing huge amounts of damage. And when you combine these different factors, the overpowers from Banished Lords, the overpowers from Wrathmas Chosen, and then the overpowers that are coming from the Blood Surge itself, where every 5th Blood Surge guarantees overpower, the damage profile of the build becomes crazy consistent and crazy high. Consistent damage profiles perform very well in hordes, but also this setup just does more damage. So it's also going to be much faster kill times. This setup is designed to do the most amount of damage possible in a tier 8 horde while also having the amount of survivability it needs to do it comfortably. And that's what you're going to be seeing in this gear. That's why it's set up the way that it is. So for starters, with the Lucian, the most important thing is the secondary roll. You need a maximum rolled secondary, or at least 14 or 15, and then you need the maximum life as the second most important stat. The third stat is lucky hit chance, but it's much less important. Maximum life and the secondary are the main things that matter, specifically the maximum life. On our chest piece, we want a total armor roll. This allows us to play way greedier on the Paragon, and we're able to run a lot more damage. We're also going to be rolling on total armor percentage as a tempering so that we can have enough armor to be able to do the content. Obviously, we need to get to armor cap 9230. We're getting most of it from our chest piece, actually. For our other tempering, we're actually looking for lucky hit chance to stun or freeze, not slow. Slow is not good. But Embalmer is wonderful, right? This is the core of the build, and this version of the build lets you get away with running Embalmer on your chest piece. On your gloves, the most important stat is Blood Surge draining additional times. This is going to add significantly more damage in single target, and it's going to allow you to rip through elites. Elites have way more health than the trash, and this stat gives you the most damage for elites while also proccing the most lucky hit, which is going to give you blood orbs and it's going to give you corpses. On your pants, the secondary overpower roll is the most important roll by far. And then the only thing else you really care about is like maximum life. Nothing else really matters. You just need pants with maximum overpower roll. On your boots, what we're looking for is actually end max life and resist all elements. Now that armor roll on your chest piece can go to boots and the resist all can go to your chest. Either way is totally fine, but you need a resist all and you need an armor roll on your gear because, like I said, we're playing an extremely greedy Paragon board. On our temperings, we're looking for chance to stun on hit or chance to freeze on hit, and then we're looking for movement speed. For the aspect, we're running the cursed aura aspect so we can automatically curse enemies, meaning we can just kill them instantly. Because remember, Blood Moon Breaches requires enemies to be cursed, so this 150% multiplier, and the cursed aura auto applies it. It's also going to proc some other damage multipliers, and ultimately this is just awesome. It's really, really comfortable to play with. I like it. On our weapon, we're playing Doombringer. And don't worry, if you don't have Uber Uniques, I'm going to talk about that at the end. But on our weapon, we are playing Doombringer. We're looking for either Masterworks on either maximum life or damage reduction. Both are fine. Damage reduction is more survivability. Maximum life is some survivability and some damage. Totally up to you. But all stat and chance to heal do not matter nearly as much as those two stats. On your amulet, actually attack speed is phenomenal. Ranks to core skills is phenomenal. Maximum life is phenomenal. All three of those stats are really good. And then the secondary roll is also extremely important. This is one of those pieces, same as your gloves, where the rolls are very, very, very important, and pretty much all of the stats are great. So just try to get the best roll banished you possibly can. On your ring, remember, we're still doing that same tech where we have lucky hit chance to apply vulnerable. This is the only source of vulnerable in the build, so you have to have lucky hit chance to apply vulnerable on your ring, or you're going to be losing out on 20% damage. We're also looking for crit chance, and ideally this would be a 3 masterworked GA'd crit chance. I haven't fixed my ring yet, but yeah, that's what it is ideally. Then we're getting on blood attack speed, and for the tempering, we don't want resource cost reduction, we want resource generation. Because remember, Banished Lords, right? We don't want to reduce our cooldown costs, we actually want them to be as high as possible. On our ring, RSS, obviously, this thing is freaking broken. It's giving you 5 ranks of core skills, it's giving you a 50% multiplier, it's giving you attack speed, crit chance, it's giving you lucky hit, and it's reducing the cost of your skill by 50%. That part kind of sucks, but it's actually fine in this build because it lets us, like, we wouldn't be able to play this combo exactly how we're playing it without RSS helping supplement it. So for now, we're playing RSS, and the stats on it are amazing. Oh yeah, and for your tempering, or for your Masterworks, we're looking for core skills and crit chance. So ideally, you want to get your crit chance as close to 100% as possible. You can see I'm at 91 right now, and I drink a crit elixir, which takes me to 97. So I'm 3% off. So ideally, I would get a little bit more crit, but this is a pretty good. On our offhand, this is where I would get the crit, by the way. This is what I would want to masterwork my crit on this. But you want a GA crit chance on this thing. You want blood attack speed. You want blood nova size. You want int. You want max life. And this is a pretty good offhand. And we're going to be running the sacrificial aspect on it. And all of this combined is going to give us a huge amount of damage and enough survivability to wreck the content. I want to talk about 2 other things with the gear real quick. One is what to do if you don't have Ubers, which is a lot of people. So for starters, we're actually going to be dropping a focus, and we're going to be adding a shield. This shield is going to allow us to run the aspect of Hardened Bones, which is going to give us the survivability we need to do harder content. And instead of Doombringer, we're going to be equipping a weapon with Sacrificial on it. And then instead of this ring, we're going to be equipping a ring with not Rasmus Chosen, but actually with Bloodbathe. Rasmus Chosen gives you too much attack speed. You actually want Bloodbathe on this ring. And this combination is going to be plenty powerful to do tier 5 and 6, but obviously the Uber version is going to be needed to really push the build to its limit. Now, I want to talk about another version of the build that's actually really sick, which is a version where you play Tyrael's Might, and then you put Embalmer on your shield. if you're looking for a super tanky setup, this setup right here is very tanky and still has the damage. If you want to go even tankier, you can wear Doombringer. Wouldn't recommend it though. But this version actually obliterates bosses, and it's very tanky while doing it. It just isn't quite as much damage as the normal setup. So you can play any of these setups. They're all linked in the description, so don't worry if you didn't follow all that. But this is the setup I prefer. And one last thing I want to mention about gear, I actually do a swap for the boss, where I will put on Grandfather for the boss. This is because Grandfather is a ginormous damage multiplier, and it's going to carry your damage on the boss fight. Now, this only shaves off probably 20 or 15% of the time on Council. Grandfather swap, totally unnecessary, but if you have a Grandfather, feel free to swap to it for the boss fight, specifically the Council fight, to just make it a bit faster. But yeah, that's going to do it for the gear. Now, for the Book of the Dead, we're going to be running Skirmishers for the crit chance. We're going to be running Bone Mages for the overpower multiplier, and we're going to be running Iron Golem for the damage multiplier. Pretty static stuff. There's not really any room here for modification. Those are just the best options. Now, for skill tree, there's a couple of options. This is what I think is best. It's the highest damage, and it has enough survivability to get through stuff. But some people will opt for minor modifications, but this is what I think is best. So it is actually important we go Hemorrhage with Enhanced Hemorrhage, so that after we pick up our Blood Orb, our next Hemorrhage will generate additional Essence. And this actually ends up being quite useful because sometimes, you don't find a Blood Orb to pick up to heal to proc your Starlight, and you actually need to cast Hemorrhage to generate Essence. This is mostly true in single target, but it happens occasionally from time to time, so it's just nice to have on your bar. We're also taking Unliving Energy to get access to Imperfectly Balanced for the damage multiplier. And remember, the increased cost doesn't matter that much because we're healing so much that we're able to out-heal the increased cost. We're, of course, putting 5 points into Blood Surge, and then we're going to Paranormal Blood Surge so we get a guaranteed overpower every 5 cast. 3 points in Huge Flush is vital. This is going to be our corpse generation against bosses, and remember, the Council fight is a 3-boss fight. And what's cool is, because they're all elites, we're going to be hitting them 9 times, plus the Nova, so 10 times with my gloves. Obviously, this is best in slot, but for me, I'm going to be hitting them 9 times. For you guys, you're going to be hitting them 8 times, 7 times, 6 times a cast, which means you're going to be getting a ton of procs of Huge Flesh. This is going to give you uptime on Corpse Eater. It's going to give you corpses for eating for Blood Orbs. It's going to give you resource for eating the corpses. This does so much, right? And the extra hits add so much damage. This is part of what makes the extra hits of Blood Drain so useful, because they proc Lucky Hit. For Blood Mist, we are just taking Enhanced Blood Mist. You can, in theory, this is one of the deviations you can do, run Ghastly Blood Mist for the corpse generation so that you have better uptime in single target. I don't think this is worth it personally. I'd rather spend the skill point on other things, but this is an option. Now, I have to play 1 point into Spiked Armor. Remember, you need 92-30 armor. I'm 29 short right now because I'm a loser, but that's where I'm at, so that's what I'm playing. So for you, you might need 2 points into Spiked Armor, you might need none. It just depends on your gear rolls. But, this is a point where you can put this into Ghastly Blood Mist, you could put this into Grim Harvest. There's a lot of places you could put this point. Death's Approach is a good option if you don't need it, or if you need 2 points, you can take it out of Death's Approach, right? We're running Grim Harvest for a little bit of resource generation, but primarily fueled by death, 9% damage multiplier, generating tons of corpses with Huge Flesh, so it's always up. Death's Embrace, damage reduction and damage dealt, very good. Death's Approach, a little bit of movement speed. This is one of your flex slots. Movement speed matters in hordes, but it's not terribly important. It's useful, but not mandatory. So if you have points to work with, I would put them in this, or just take them out and put them into other stuff. Amplify damage, straight 12%. And then we're running Decrepify, Abhorrent Decrepify for the cooldown reduction. This is arguably not worth it. However, I like the little bit of CC, but particularly I like the cooldown reduction on Blood Mist. My cooldown on Blood Mist is extremely low, and every time I need it, it is up. So I'm able to use it as CC break or to reposition, etc. And, we have the, every time we overpower reduces its cooldown, and we have whenever we're hitting enemies reducing its cooldown. You combine those two things, you get pretty damn good uptime. Moving over here, 3 points into Gruesome Mending, which is kind of weird, but your drains are hitting so many times, and you're getting life from the drains, obviously, to heal yourself up, but you're also getting resource based on the amount of healing you're receiving. So this is also 30% increased resource generation. Very powerful. Coalesce Blood, 30% multiplier, can't pass it up. Drain Vitality, incredibly important. This is where all of your Fortify is coming from, and there are times, 3 points of this should be sufficient. Sometimes you might need Fortify from other places, but generally not. Especially once you get a halfway decent pair of gloves where you're draining 5 or 6 additional times. Drain Vitality is very easy to keep up. Tides of Blood, ginormous 120% multiplier, extremely good. And then we get to one of my favorite options in the whole skill tree, which is Transfusion. This is an option that at first seems really stupid and very odd because this talent sucks, but actually Blood Orbs do so much for this build. In AoE, you're going to have a 9% chance against normal mobs to spawn Blood Orbs, and this is doubled against bosses, which includes the end of dungeon bosses. Because there's 3 of them, you're going to be spawning a ton of Blood Orbs with Transfusion. Now, it does have an internal cooldown of 4 seconds, but that internal cooldown of 4 seconds actually applies to each mob individually, not to the skill itself. So when there's 3 bosses, you're spawning a Blood Orb like every 5 or 6 seconds on each boss. This ends up being pretty good. And remember, lucky hit is very good, very easy for us to proc because we're hitting so many times. Going down here, we got 3 points of Inspiring Leader for 12% crit. Mandatory in every build is so good. Standalone for that nice damage reduction. And then Momentum Mori for increased crit chance and increased overpowered damage. Crit chance is really important in this build. And I think I drink a crit elixir whenever I do my clears. I sit around 98%, so I'm a little bit short, but sitting pretty. And then we get into Rathma's Vigor. So if you watched my previous video, if you watched any Blood Surge video, you know that Rathma's Vigor is crazy strong because you're creating so many Blood Orbs. And every time you pick up a Blood Orb, you reduce the cooldown. So by default, every 12 seconds you get an overpower, but every time you pick up a Blood Orb, it reduces the cooldown by 2. Now in my previous video, I did talk about, I thought at the time that you could proc this multiple times per Blood Orb, but this is actually not the case. You can actually only proc Rathma's Vigor once per Blood Orb. So this is partly why we're dropping like Doombringer, right? Maximum life is not as important anymore because this is only healing you for you're only getting 2 seconds off per Blood Orb. But anyway, lots of optimizations in the skill tree, but the Paragon board is really cool. So this was made by a player named Garm, who, if you don't know, I believe he's a like class master or whatever in the Discord, and he makes good Paragon boards. He's been playing Blood for a long time, and this board is no exception. This board is a ton of damage. You've got Corporeal here for 10%, you got Exploit for 10%, and you're going to see like every glyph is a damage glyph, but it's still able to run Blood Bath for the 70%. It's able to run Flesh Eater for the 40%. Remember, we're always going to have this up. And this board is even able to fit in Blood Begets Blood. And it's able to do all of this while getting all of these glyphs. It runs Scent of Death, it hits all these glyphs, and it's getting every maximum life. This board is very well optimized. Shoutouts to him. Well done by him. So resource generation is a big factor on this build, and it's important to remember that Blood Orbs give you a huge amount of resource because of the Starlight aspect. Now, in single target, I'm actually going to equip a different pair of gloves here. The Blood Surge drains only 3 times instead of my normal pair, which is plus 8, just to show you how well this works in single target. Because remember, the more drains you get, the more resource you get, because the more you're going to heal and the more Blood Orbs are going to spawn. But this setup actually works with only a plus 3, because I'm healing so much. And what I need to do is you just have to weave in the occasional hemorrhage to help pay for this. But you can see, like, I'm able to pay for the Lucian. I just keep walking around the boss, I keep looking for Blood Orbs, and I just make sure to walk through the Blood Orb when one spawns. And if I run out of Blood Orbs and I run out of resource, then I just weave in a quick hemorrhage. And because of the way attack speed works, the hemorrhage cast is actually crazy fast to just throw one out. And it's gonna generate tons of essence, and yeah, you're gonna be perfectly good in single target. And yeah, that's pretty much the build. So we've made these huge optimizations. The Paragon board hugely improved. The gear is hugely improved. Everything about the build is so much better than it was, and I am very happy with it. My goal was to just get a build that I could farm tier 8s with, right? I'm like watching all these Sorks, watching all these Druids just destroying tier 8s, and I'm like, how can we get to the point where we're tanky enough and have enough damage where we can just chill and relax, listen to music, and do tier 8s? And this is that build. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Hope you guys like the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.